Welcome to NFL Live. We have a packed show for you today, a lot that you don't want to miss, including what's next for the Bills. Dan Orlovsky has a list of fine-tuning that they need to do if they're going to make it over that Chiefs hump next year. You'll find out what it is, including maybe a new weapon offensively for Josh Allen. Also, POVR, Hawk and Dan are here, breaking down a two-point conversion from the Chiefs that was crucial. You'll see it in ways you can't see it anywhere else, okay? Don't miss that. And there can only be one. What are the Steelers going to do with their quarterback situation? We'll hear from them, as well as some thoughts we have on the plans for Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. That's all coming your way here on the show. A lot to get to as we welcome you in. And we're going to start with everything going on in Dallas. The Cowboys introduced their new head coach, Brian Schottenheimer, yesterday, complete with a press conference that had everyone talking. And today, Schottenheimer made his first hire, bringing along former Bears head coach Matt EBERFLUS as his defensive coordinator. A lot to dive into there as we welcome you into the show. We got Dan Orlovsky, as I mentioned, of course. Hawk is here as well, and Dan Graziano, who you see right there. Graz, I'll start with you. What more can you tell us about this move by the Cowboys?
Matt EBERFLUS was a Cowboys defensive assistant for 7 years prior to his time as the Colts defensive coordinator and later the Bears head coach. So he's familiar with the organization, and the organization is familiar with him. It felt like he was the favorite for this job for a while, and it came to fruition officially today. Brian Schottenheimer adding a former head coach to his staff, which is something you often see a first-time head coach do, just for sort of advice purposes on some logistical matters. So EBERFLUS will join, and also they're bringing in Nick Sorensen as special teams coordinator. He was the defensive coordinator last season for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, I love it. I love EBERFLUS as a defensive coordinator. The number one order of business is to fix the gaping hole in the middle of your defense, and that's both literally and figuratively. They have to have interior D-line help to stop the run. They were really bad at it last year. Third worst in the league at 4.8 yards a carry. They gave up 25 rushing touchdowns, which is the most in franchise history in the day of a passing era. So think about that for this defense. These are problems that they've had for multiple years. So EBERFLUS has to come in, get a solution, get that corrected in order for them to have success.
Yeah, I think they need two interior defensive tackles because the ones that they have right now I don't think are the ideal fits for EBERFLUS. If you think about Matt EBERFLUS's defense, they always have one just dominant defensive tackle that handles the run, but also is a really good interior pass rusher. The backbone of this defense is they want to be able to rush forward and play their zone coverage and force defenses to drive the length of the field. And I do think that there are some solid pieces. Obviously, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, Overshown. Can he get healthy enough to be impactful? So there are some good pieces that schematically fit. I agree, Hawk, to your point. If they don't get a defensive tackle or two that really, I'm not even talking good players. You got to get like game changers. Think DeForest Buckner in Indy. That's one of the ways why EBERFLUS became such a coveted defensive coordinator, obviously, than head coach.
Yeah, the Cowboys' defensive tackles had the fourth worst run-stop win rate this season. Not really surprising considering what it actually looked like. Also interesting because they didn't make moves for big names before. We'll see if that changes this offseason. All right, as for the Cowboys' offense, it could use some more creativity under Schottenheimer. This season, they had motion at the time of the snap at the fourth lowest rate in the NFL, set up in a condensed formation at the second lowest rate. They also had the fastest tempo in the NFL, averaging 27 seconds per play. Now, the new head coach addressed some of his plans on that front yesterday.
The starting point for me would be things that our players do well. You're always going to start with that. If your system's not flexible enough to do what your players do well, then you're probably in the wrong business. But I'm a big believer in cut splits. I'm a big believer in shifts and motions to distort things. We're going to do a great job of marrying our runs and our passes and make those look the same.
Okay, I will point out that Schottenheimer was there before as the offensive coordinator. Now, certainly McCarthy was calling plays and had ownership of the offense, but it's interesting when you think about what can change. So, Dan, do you think a more creative scheme will help Dak in this offense?
Yeah, very much so. What Cowboys need to do with their offense is make it 2025. It is very much so, has been at least under Mike McCarthy, stuck in like 2004. And that's one of the reasons why there was such a demand for execution. There was very little, in Brian Schottenheimer's words, distortion of the defense. So when you're trying to create explosive pass plays, you're trying to create a vertical and horizontal stretch at the same time. There's only so much you can do in your drop back pass game where you're just trying to get completions. But when you're trying to push the ball downfield 15, 20 yards, you have to get that stretch at the same time. My big complaint was it was only vertical for Dallas. I said this year it was like theme paper, just constant straight lines. They have to incorporate the horizontal stretch or the horizontal threat of their pass game and just bring it to modern. I do think it's important to point out one of the reasons why they were the fastest in their snaps is because they do value Dak being at the line of scrimmage and being able to get them in and out of plays. I think that's a strength of his. I think that teams that are really good on offense nowadays utilize tempo the right way. They did it only one way. You have to do tempo multiple ways in the NFL right now for it to actually be a strength.
Absolutely, and tempo is used the same way those cut, splits, and motions he's talking about are used because you're trying to get the other side of the ball to be thinking while they're playing while you're at full speed. Right? So by giving you the shifts in motion, it disguises the cut splits, which are typically for, to be able to fit into blocking schemes in your run game. Well, now if you're able to run your full menu of pass plays out of that, it helps disguise what you're doing, and it makes your defensive backfield, your linebackers, have to consider everything.
Right.
Every play, that's what you want. The moments where you line up and just run it, to his point about a scheme, not being flexible enough to do what the players do well, that's a thing of the past. And it's one of the number one mistakes that offensive coordinators make.
My philosophy on cut splits has always been it really evolved for teams that didn't have enough talent to just line up and beat somebody.
I ran a lot of cut splits. So.
But what it does is it takes people who are talented enough and kind of gives them the advantage.
Yes.
That's why you see Cooper Kupp having done it for so long, Justin Jefferson. I also think it's fair to say, one, they have to get a more viable number 2 option opposite CeeDee Lamb.
Absolutely.
And everyone continues to say running back for them. I totally disagree. I don't think this team needs to chase running back. I think Rico Dowdle showed a lot this year. If I were the Cowboys, running back offensively would probably be like 4th or 5th on my list. Rico Dowdle would unquestionably be my starting back going into the season.
They've actually drafted well in recent years and developed some of that talent. There's still a lot of holes to fill, so we'll keep
You
an eye
got to
on that.
get somebody opposite CeeDee Lamb.
Reminder, free agency is early March, so that time will be coming soon to see what they do. All right, lots of coaching hires have already happened, meaning there's only one team left in the search for a new head coach. That would be the Saints. So let's bring Graz back in here. What is the latest in New Orleans?
Last night, Laura, Saints officials flew to Philadelphia to interview Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore for the head coach job. It's a second interview with Kellen Moore. Because he interviewed virtually prior to the divisional round, the Saints were able to interview him in person, do a second interview this week. After February 2nd, after Sunday, coaches on the Super Bowl teams are not allowed to have any more contact with other teams. So the Saints trying to hit a window here to get the second interview done with Kellen Moore. We have also heard the name of Mike McCarthy, the former Packers and Cowboys coach. We've heard the name of Cliff Kingsbury, the Commanders' offensive coordinator. It is possible that those guys can get interviews set up with the Saints this week. But as of now, Kellen Moore is the guy they went to talk to last night, and you have to think he is one of the favorites, if not the favorite at this point, to land that job.
All right, we'll keep an eye on it, and Graz is with us through